Hello, my name is Nelia Rodriguez, and this is my presentation for Phase 3 assignment. So for Phase 3, my objectives of this PowerPoint presentation is to talk about Chapter 9, 10, 11, and 12. Chapter 9 talks about homeostasis, motivation, and reward. Chapter 10 talks about sexual behavior. Chapter 11 talks about sleep and waking. And Chapter 12 talks about learning and memory. So first, we're going to start with the definition of neuroscience. Neuroscience is a scientific study of the nervous system, including the brain, the spinal cord, and the neurons, which is crucial for understanding how the brain functions, influences behavior, cognition, uncovers the mechanisms underlying brain activity, and to apply this knowledge to a diagnosis and treat neurological and psychological disorders. Some key questions here are: how do brain processes contribute to mental health conditions, and what are the potential interventions based on these findings? Chapter 9 talks about homeostasis, motivation, and reward. It talks about the regulatory systems, which are the systems that the body uses to keep everything on check and in balance. Motivation, which is what drives it towards goals. Temperature, how the body keeps temperature, thirst, and eating in homeostasis, and eating disorders. So homeostasis, the regulatory system, and motivation. Homeostasis is a steady internal balance or equilibrium, in this case being the body. So the body keeps homeostasis through two mechanisms. The first one is positive feedback, and the second one is negative feedback. Negative feedback, an example would be like when there's too much glucose in the blood. The opposite of glucose is insulin, so the body signals the pancreas to make more insulin, and this insulin is going to lower the levels of sugar or glucose in the body, which is going to take the body back to homeostasis, and that's called the negative feedback mechanism. The other one is positive feedback mechanism. It's rarely used in the body, but it's when, like for example, when a woman is going to give birth, it secretes a hormone that starts the contractions, and instead of balancing that hormone down or keeping it in homeostasis, it actually allows it to keep on going up and up until the fetus comes out. That's positive feedback. So a negative feedback, the opposite hormone or the opposite chemical is produced to level down the whatever is in excess, and in positive feedback, the excess is actually multiplied until the goal is reached. The regulatory systems, it actively defends certain values or set points. It keeps everything at certain values. The body likes to keep everything in exact values. That's how it controls temperature, fluid levels, body weight. And the final part, motivation, is active and direct behavior towards a goal. Like, what is driving this person to meet that goal? This drives, or these motivations can either be drive or push theories, which is in the drive or push theories, the motivation comes from the inside, like something internal. And for incentive or pull theories, the motivation is actually external. So the motivation come from within, or it could come from outside. Body temperature. The body regulates temperature through the hypothalamus, which detects deviations from the set points and activates mechanisms like sweating or shivering to maintain homeostasis. There are internal and external behavior elements designed to regain the set points, such as shivering and thirst. All animals have to maintain an internal temperature suitable for normal cellular activity. This depends on where they live or how they live, and adaptation to climate occurs within species. Depending on where these species live, they have these adaptations, like fur or keeping over different ways to keep their body temperatures in homeostasis. So thirst is regulated through the body, through the hypothalamus, which detects changes in blood osmolarity and triggers the sensation of thirst. So the first thing that gets triggered is the sensation that for you to feel thirsty, and this feeling of thirst encourages the person to take water. And this water, once the person takes the water, that restores the fluid balance within the body. The sensation of thirst initiates when there is a drop in fluid levels. If the cells are dehydrated, it's called osmotic thirst. If the fluid levels drop in the blood, it's called hypovolemic thirst. Chapter 10 talks about sexual behavior, sexual development, sexual abnormalities, puberty, sex hormone, sex chromosome genes, gender, and sexual orientation. Sexual development is regulated by the hypothalamus and pituitary gland. Pituitary gland is the master gland where all the hormones come out from, which releases hormones that stimulate the gonads to produce sex hormones, guiding the development of secondary sexual characteristics and reproductive organs. So the mother is always going to provide an X chromosome, and the father can either provide an X chromosome like the mother or a Y chromosome. Only the father can provide a Y chromosome. And if the offspring gets XX, that's going to be a female offspring. If the offspring gets XY, that's going to be a male offspring. Sex differences in behavior. So females they show higher empathy and they have a slight disadvantage when it comes to verbal tasks. Males, they're usually more physically aggressive and they have a slight disadvantage at visual-spatial tasks. Children start manifesting sex-type toy preference between 12 and 18 months. So girls will navigate towards girl toys and boys will navigate towards boy toys. And this distinction doesn't come until about 12 months to 18 months. And they did an experiment with young monkeys, and they showed that the monkeys actually had a very similar reaction than human children. At about 12 or 18, they started deciding like what gender they wanted their toys or gender specific toy selections. Chapter 11 talks about sleep and waking. It talks about biorhythms, sleep patterns, sleep abnormalities, hormone secretions, lifetime changes in sleep, sleep deprivation, and narcolepsy. So lifetime changes in sleep. Throughout our life, we go through different sleep patterns. In infancy, when we're infants, usually we spend about 14 to 16 hours a day sleeping. And out of these 14 to 16 hours of sleep, 50% of it is REM time. REM stands for rapid eye movement, and that's actually the stage where we dream. During early childhood, there's high levels of delta wave sleeps. This delta wave sleep is where we restore our body and where our body physically recovers, so it's very important. And once we hit puberty, we are 20% time in REM. So we drop down from 50 to 20. And the reason for this is all those hormonal changes in the body of this person going through puberty is affecting their sleep. Once we're adults, sleep declines in midlife. Time spent in stage 3 and 4 of the sleep cycle decreases. Stage 3 is the initiation of deep sleep, and stage 4 is restoration, where we restore our bodies. And these changes in adulthood could be due to aging and changing in the brain structures and also hormones. Theories of dreaming. So there's many theories for dreaming. There's not necessarily a straight answer as to why we dream. So there's one theory called the activation synthesis theory, which says that the brain is trying to make sense of all this random stimuli that it got throughout the day. So it starts like making a dream out of those random stimulation it received. There's another theory called the neural network model, and this is they say that the dreams are the brain's attempt to process and integrate experiences and emotions through neural networks. There's the evolutionary model, which dreams are seen as a tool for evolutionary advantages, aiding in navigating complex social and environmental challenges. And there is a threat simulation theory, which says that we dream because that's a way for the brain to simulate and practice responses for potential threats in the future. To this day, scientists don't have an exact reason as to why we dream. Chapter 12 talks about response to environment, types of learning, sensation, long-term memory, classical conditioning, operant conditioning, long-term potential, and memory. So there's two types of learning. There's associative learning, and this has two subtypes. It has classical conditioning, which is a neutral stimulus becomes associated with an automatic response by repeatedly pairing. And there's operant conditioning, which behaviors are influenced by rewards or punishment. In another category, we have non-associative learning, where like habitual learning is allowing an organism to ignore irrelevant or constant stimuli and focus on new or significant ones. And there's also sensitization, which is an organism's response to a stimulus increases with repeated exposure. Memory works in our body through the encoding, storage, and retrieval of information in the brain. Neurons communicate through the synapse and strengthen these connections, a process called synaptic plasticity, which helps store and recall memories. Long-term memories are, there's two types of memory, long-term and short-term. Long-term memories involves the stabilization and storage of information through synaptic plasticity, where repeated activation strengthens synaptic connections and form durable neural circuits in regions such as the hippocampus and cortex. Short-term memory, on the other hand, relies on the temporary activation of neural circuits, primarily the prefrontal cortex, where information is held briefly and actively maintained through mechanisms like rehearsal before being either forgotten or transferred to long-term memory. And at the bottom here, I have like a little images of how I don't think you can see it on the screen very well. But in the middle, the green box says short-term memory. To the left, that purple box is sensory memory, and to the right, that different purple box, it says long-term memory. So what's going to happen first is we have like sensory input throughout our body, and all this information is going to go to the sensory memory. Some of the information that stays unattended, whatever does not interest us, is going to get lost in the way. So what we are paying attention, that's what goes through next to the next stage, which is short-term memory. In this stage, in order for us to remember this information, we have to do what's called a maintenance rehearsal, which is repeating that information over and over and over again until it's memorized, kind of like a phone number. Once it's memorized, it gets encoded into the long-term memory, which stores information indefinitely. It does once in a while forget certain information or memories. And once we want to retrieve these memories, they move from the long-term memory to the short-term memory so we can remember them. Thank you very much. That is my presentation for today. Have a great day.